So today what we're going to do is kind of a simple project. I got a very nice set of kitchen knives from my in-laws, but I can't store them the way I'm storing all my other knives that I have right now. They're just thrown in a drawer. What I want to do today is I'm going to take and use some wood from an old pallet I hauled home and just cut it up and make a knife block for these knives. So I've got these boards here. There's 3 of them here. But I'll probably just need 1 of them. We're just gonna cut it in pieces and then we'll carve out the shape of the knives so they can slide in there. First things first, I just want to take and put a tape measure on these, figure out what my longest knife blade is, which is this one here, and get a measurement so I know how long my boards are gonna need to be. So this knife here has a blade that's right at about 8 3/4. So I'll probably just make my longest board in the back about 10 inches long. That way I can keep them low, put them on a little bit of an angle, and that way they don't hit the upper cabinets when I pull them out. So now comes the question, can I actually fit both of these knives in here? That looks like that's gonna work. So I am gonna put these in there horizontally so the knife will slide in horizontally. You can do them vertical, but then you wanna put the back of the knife down. That way you're not dulling your knife every time you pull it out. But instead, I think I'm just gonna stick to this way. So these two will go in like this. Then the next step down, I'll have these 2 knives. And I think on the 3rd board, I should be able to put my scissors. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take and cut off these nails to start with. So I'm gonna probably just go ahead and make this 10 1/2, just so I know that I've got some extra length there. So this is essentially the design of it. We got it stacked up. Once we carve out the groove for the knife, we'll have plenty of room in here. Same with the scissors up top. We'll have plenty of room there. This is actually upside down. It'll be the other way around. And then when we're done, we'll want it to sit somewhat like that maybe. So we'll just find out what angle we want it to sit at, and we'll take and cut this crossed, and then we could probably even flip that and use a little block to hold it up. I need to sand these down to smooth them out so they sit a little flatter. I probably should have done that before I even cut them, to be honest. Probably would have been easier instead of doing a bunch of little pieces, just one long piece. But let's take and sand these down. All right, so we got a sander with a 60 grit sandpaper. Let me grab a mask and then we'll start shaving this down. That's a little too slow. Let's try this. So I got some of the stuff sanded down. Obviously they should be planed to actually get them tight fit. I'm not really gonna worry about that. I'm just gonna get my stuff in there and glue it, and then I'll putty it or whatever just to make it look nice on the end before I sand it. I'm gonna start by laying these out. So that's right at 3/4 in. If I did this side, 3/4 in. Since these have this cardboard, I can actually just use this cardboard to trace out the size of the hole I want. There we go. We're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna carve it up in each one of the boards the same all the way through. It keeps that spacing. And then we're gonna take and cut this down, probably with a circular saw, and just get a slice in there, and then we'll just chisel the inside out. Go ahead and take this, essentially put it as low as we can. Half of a tooth, it's probably pretty close. So a little bit more. Okay, so you can see I've got the cuts. Now I can kind of take a chisel and just clean that all out. Wrong. So what we're doing though is I'm taking my saw and I'm just cutting slots in, and then I can take and chisel out what's left To be honest, this is pretty hard wood and I have some pretty dull chisels. So chances are I'm gonna just try and cut as much as this as I can and leave barely anything left.
Told ya.
Okay. Between the chisel and running the saw over, we got that knocked out. That seems to be pretty good. So that'll sit in there. It's flush, perfect. Now we just got to do the same thing, but for this other knife, and then we should be able to move on to the next board. So, 2 of them down. This one will also lay in there nicely. Alright, so I got the first one cut. Gonna do the second one. Probably didn't think this out 100% how I wanted to do it, but I guess the goal would be to keep the handles lined up so we'll have the same dimension. Since this is a thicker knife blade and the handle sits over here, I need to come in the same. The first one will be 3/4. And then the second knife should be 3.5 inches. 3.5. That way, when you put the knives in, the handles are aligned. This knife here, put on this side. And then comes this little guy. Alright, same process. Start cutting. So we got the second one cut out. So we can take these now and stack them up. Trying to see how this is going to work. And the little one. You can kind of see how they all line up. Now I'm just going to do the last piece, and this piece with the scissors, instead of going up, I'm actually probably going to take these down into this one and leave this third piece here whole, just to get a little separation. We're going to take this, hold that down, and then come right up the top of here. It's about a 1/2 inch, so we'll go probably 5/8 into this board. We're going to take this and center this one 5 3/4. So 2.5 plus 1/4 plus 1/8. So 2 7/8. What happens inside of here really doesn't matter. So we're going to actually just keep that square. And we'll do the exact same thing we did on the other ones. We have the scissors cut out. Those drop in there. So now we should be ready to take, basically glue everything up, and then I can take and shape the rest of the block to make it look like something. So we're going to take and get these glued up now. Try and not use too much glue because I don't want it oozing into the actual slots themselves. And then we'll get it clamped up, let it sit for the night, and then in the morning we can take and cut my bevel on the bottom, then we'll take and sand everything down on the outside to shape it up. So what I'm going to try and do is just put the glue on the side with the knife each time. That way I'm not putting it on this side because then it's just going to end up in my knife slot. And my glue has been sitting out here in the barn. It is hard on top. See if we can make it work still. So we're just going to smear it on there with a stick because I'm not going to buy new glue. So we'll let it dry overnight and then take a look at it in the morning. It's the next day, time to unclamp this, make sure the glue held. So there's our block. Looks like everything's held pretty good. There's some gaps in there obviously because we didn't plane it down, but I think we can take and just sand everything up. Next thing up we want to take and cut this base on an angle. So I kind of drew like a 25-degree angle on this, just that seemed what's right. We've got this, we put this corner right on the corner and then line this up at the 25 degrees here. We'll just mark that and then flip it over and do the same thing. Take and bury the saw all the way down. You can see this is mostly cut through, but not entirely. So we need to connect it. Put this on a 25-degree angle. Now we should just have this last little bit here. Okay, so we've got it cut. It's right at that tipping point pretty much. So we should be able to maybe even take this piece and then match it up there, glue that on, and that'll give us our structure for the block. Set up now. Now we just need to sand down all these rough edges, get everything to plane out, maybe even sand this up, and then we'll glue it at the end. So let's get the grinder out. We're gonna start with the 4-inch grinder with that sanding disc for these sides. We've got quite a bit of material to take off in some places. Not perfect, but just smoothed out. Okay, well, before I started sanding, I took and ran it up to the house, kind of set it in place, dropped some knives into it, and the issue I have is that with this angle, the knives come up and then they hit my upper cabinets on the bottom. So what it looks like I need to do is go almost to about here, about 3/4 to an inch, somewhere that I need back here. So what I actually need to do is take that off of the front. What needs to happen is this angle needs to now go from the 25 it is to probably 35. So that cut I made turned out real nice, so that sucks that we're gonna have to do this again. And then the bad part is now this would have to go into this block also to work to be this stand. So I'll have to either glue this to this piece or make a new one of these altogether that matches the correct angle. Anyway, I guess let's get this cut and then we'll test it again. Thank God. Now, way steeper, the angle for the base. Honestly, I might still just glue that on there. It doesn't have to be fancy, pretty simple. So I'm gonna run this up to the house. We're gonna stick it underneath the cabinets and make sure it works, and then we'll get to sanding. So 35 degrees seems to work. Misses the top cabinets. Thinking about it, I'm willing to bet I probably could have just Googled that and no one had told me that same angle or something similar to it of what to put a knife block at so it misses the cabinet. But anyway, here we are. So we're gonna start sanding. I'm gonna use this 4-inch grinder with a sanding disc on it. Yesterday, the one I was using was a 60 grit that I'd used to sand an entire steel trailer with. So this is probably gonna eat off a lot of material really fast, which we need to do anyway. Alright, that worked very well. Took a lot of the big chunks off, got it all set, got this filed down. So I think what I want to do is actually take and drill a couple holes through here and run some small headed nails so I can sand this all together now. I'll do a little bit of sanding on the front just to smooth it out, but overall that's the finished shape. So I'd rather sand the whole block together. So I've got these nails, put one here. As long as this is the scissor plate, so anywhere on the outsides of this I can go all the way into this board. We're gonna get this lined up. I'm gonna pre-drill my holes and then we'll put some glue on there and tack it together. Now we're gonna do this side. Should really probably let that glue dry, but I'm gonna go ahead and like sand this in, try and blend it all in together. So we sanded out the 4-inch grinder, hit it with that 40 grit, took out all the big chunks and just kind of leveled it all out. Then took the 60 grit on the 4-inch grinder, that one that's kind of burnt out, and just took all the big swirl marks out that the 40 grit left. I switched over to the orbital sander with a 60 grit on there and got a rough sand on this, kind of smoothed out any of the burn marks that 4-inch grinder left on here. Now what I'm going to do is take and use some filler to fill out some of these gaps that I got. Now we got these 2 cuts in here. Some people might call it a fuck up. We're just going to call it character, and that's how we guide here. You can choose to leave that character in there and do it how I did it, or just make 1 cut and skip the character.
Idiots doing idiot things because they're idiots.
Anyway, we're going to take some wood filler, fill some of these cracks and seams that are left on here, some of the nail holes, and then let that dry and then continue sanding it down. And let this dry for a little while. While this wood filler is drying, I want to take and use a Dremel tool and kind of clean up the edges of these slots. The only thing you can see is the top. Anyway, they all work for the knives. They just don't look real clean. So while we wait, we're gonna work on some other stuff. Here's the chicken coop, and we're gonna take and clean it because it's a mess. In the chicken coop, we've got it divided into 2 separate rooms. Now I usually keep the chicken feed up here in the corner, but we got 2 new chicks and we were trying to incorporate those with the rest of the chickens. So we had them in the front and the chicken feed's been in the barn, but I hate that. So we're gonna try and get this all cleaned up and get everybody back on one side. I normally don't let it get this bad, but I did. Okay, so got the chicken coop all cleaned up, let this dry for about 2 hours. Now it's time to continue sanding. We're gonna hit it with the 60 again to get the majority of this off and then work our way down, smoothing it up so we can get it stained. So I've got it all sanded, ready for stain. If you look real close, you can see where some putty didn't completely fill holes or vibrated out as I was sanding. It makes it one of a kind. I've got some red oak stain that I'm gonna stain this with. I don't know if it actually matches anything that's in my kitchen, but it matches a bookshelf in my living room, and I like the color, so we're gonna use it.